right. So this week we are diving into global power dynamics, like who's going to be calling the shots on the world stage.
Mhm.
And we've got just the thing, Ray Dalio's The Great Powers Index 2024. It's like the ultimate cheat sheet.
Yeah, Dahlia's work here is really fascinating. He goes way beyond the usual suspects, just looking at military strength or
Yeah,
GDP.
yeah.
He's factoring in education levels, innovation,
Oh.
even cultural values, and those pesky debt cycles.
Hmm.
It's a really multidimensional approach.
Multidimensional, like we're entering the quantum realm, but for like international relations.
Exactly.
Okay, so Dalio uses this thing called an empire score.
Right.
Gives the U.S. a 0.89, China a 0.80,
Mm-hmm.
puts them in the lead, which, let's be honest, not a huge shocker.
No, not really. But here's where Dalio throws a bit of a curveball.
Yeah.
He introduces this concept of per capita strength. So it's not just about size, it's about how effectively a country uses its resources, kind of like quality over quantity.
Okay.
And get this, tiny Singapore, they shoot straight to the top with a 0.89, followed by Switzerland at 0.66. The U.S. holds steady at 0.71, but China, they drop all the way down to 0.30.
Wow. Okay, so size isn't everything. It's about how you use it.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway for our two heavyweights then, the U.S. and China?
I think it really highlights their strengths, but also some vulnerabilities. So the U.S. has these powerhouse capital markets, right? Incredible military might, top-tier universities.
Yeah.
But they're also dealing with income inequality and some pretty intense internal political clashes.
Oh, yeah.
China, on the other hand, their strength is really in their booming exports, those rapid tech advancements we've seen, and a huge emphasis on education. But they're facing their own set of internal conflicts, and those rising tensions with the U.S., those could create some serious roadblocks.
Like a global tug of war. Okay, but what about the Eurozone? Where do they fit in all of this? I mean, they're a major economic bloc, right?
Oh, absolutely. The Eurozone is a perfect example of what collective economic strength can look like. They have the second largest capital markets globally, a shared currency,
Right.
but they are held back by those internal divisions, at a slower pace of innovation, I think. It's like they're strong individually, but they haven't quite figured out how to leverage that as a team.
Okay, so we've got the big players, they're duking it out. And then you have Singapore, this tiny nation just punching way above its weight class. What's their secret?
Singapore is all about strategy, a relentless focus on quality over quantity. They created this global financial hub, rock-solid legal system, and a culture that really values achievement. It's a good reminder that you don't need massive resources to become a global player.
It's like the David and Goliath of nations.
Mhm.
Are there any other unexpected success stories we should have on our radar?
It's definitely Switzerland. Their highly skilled workforce and crazy stable political landscape are huge assets. I mean, think about it. World-class education, precision engineering, and this reputation for neutrality that attracts investment from everywhere.
So smaller nations are finding really creative ways to leverage what they've got. But Dalio also talks a lot about productivity. How important is that to a country's long-term success?
Dalio argues that productivity and, it's interesting, indebtedness are the real keys to unlocking future growth.
Really?
Yeah, it might sound counterintuitive, but the fastest growing countries, they're not always the most efficient right out of the gate. It's the ones who are rapidly improving their efficiency that have the most potential. He uses this analogy of pulling back a slingshot.
The further you pull it back?
The further it flies, exactly.
I'm with you, but I'm guessing it's a little more nuanced than that.
Oh, for sure. What Dahlia's getting at is that overcoming inefficiencies is like unleashing all this pent-up potential. Think about China in the late 20th century. By opening up to global trade, they basically hit the turbo button on their economy.
It's like they unleashed this wave of economic growth.
Exactly, and that's what he calls catch-up growth.
Catch-up growth, I like they're playing a game of economic leapfrog. So who else has got their sights set on the top of the leaderboard?
Well, Dalio's really interested in India right now. They've got the cheapest labor costs among the major economies, a young and rapidly growing population, tons of ambition.
Right.
If they can tackle those debt challenges and kind of navigate those internal conflicts, they could be a major, major force.
India has definitely been making waves, especially in the tech world. It's like they're becoming like the world's innovation lab.
Exactly, and that innovative spirit, that's huge for Dalio. He sees that as a major advantage in the 21st century.
Makes sense.
But India's not the only one on his radar. Keep an eye on Southeast Asia, too, especially Indonesia.
Indonesia, really.
Yeah.
What makes them stand out? They're not always in the headlines like China or India.
That's part of what makes them so interesting. They fly under the radar, but they have a lot of the same ingredients for rapid growth. A young workforce, super inexpensive, strategic location.
Yeah.
And if they make the right investments, like in infrastructure and education, they could be the next big economic success story.
Okay, I'm adding Indonesia to my watch list.
Yeah.
What about Mexico? We talked about them earlier. Does Dalio think they have what it takes to play in the big leagues?
He does. He sees huge potential there. But they've got some serious hurdles, especially corruption and strengthening the rule of law. That's crucial.
Right.
They need to create an environment where investors, both domestic and foreign, feel confident. And that can be a tough one to crack.
Yeah, it's like they're at a crossroads.
Right.
If they make the tough decisions, build a more stable foundation, then they could be a real contender.
Absolutely. And, Dalio emphasizes this isn't just about, economic dominance, right? It's about creating a more prosperous and sustainable future for everyone. He's a big believer in education, fostering innovation, and promoting inclusive economic policies. Those are the things that ultimately lead to success.
It's a good reminder that true power isn't just about being at the top. It's about lifting others up along the way. Speaking of lifting others up, Dalio doesn't just crunch numbers, right? He dives into those cultural factors that can make or break a nation. What are some of those traits that tend to give countries an edge?
This is where Dalio's analysis gets really interesting. He's found that societies that value self-sufficiency, they prioritize achievement, innovation, and really uphold a strong rule of law, they tend to outperform.
So it's not enough to just have resources or a strategic location.
Yeah.
You need the right mindset, the right culture to really thrive.
But it's like those cultural values create the fertile ground for growth.
Totally. So is there a country that comes to mind that really embodies those principles?
South Korea is a great example. They went from a developing nation to a global tech powerhouse in just a few decades.
Amazing.
And a lot of that boils down to their work ethic. They emphasize education,
Sure.
constantly pursuing innovation. It's like they've internalized this drive to outperform, to always be improving.
It's like they cracked the code on creating a culture of success.
And Dalio argues these cultural factors, they're only becoming more important in the 21st century. We're living in this increasingly complex and interconnected world, right? The ability to adapt, innovate, embrace new ideas, those are the qualities that will separate the winners from the losers.
I love how this deep dive has gone from raw data to these bigger questions about cultural values and what drives human progress. It's like we're getting a glimpse into the operating system of nations.
Right. And I think that's what makes Dalio's work so valuable. He's not just giving us a snapshot of the present, he's helping us understand the forces shaping the future. And that is powerful knowledge, especially for someone like you who's about to give a presentation on this very topic.
Seriously. That's what I love about these deep dives. It's not just about absorbing information. It's about connecting the dots, seeing the bigger picture, and then being able to share those insights with others.
Exactly. And speaking of connecting the dots, Dalio's analysis isn't just about, identifying individual countries that are doing well.
Okay.
He's looking at the bigger trends shaping the global power landscape, too.
Okay, so what are some of those big picture trends we should be paying attention to?
Well, one of the most significant is the rise of Asia. Dalio argues that we're seeing a fundamental shift in the global balance of power,
Interesting.
with Asia poised to become the epicenter of the world economy in the 21st century.
It's like we're watching a geographical power shift happening right before our eyes.
Exactly. And think about it. China's already this economic powerhouse, right? And India's not too far behind.
Yeah.
Then you factor in the potential of Southeast Asia. It's pretty clear that center of gravity is shifting eastward.
Which has huge implications for, everything. Global trade, international relations, you name it.
Absolutely. And it's not just Asia. Either Dalio also highlights the growing importance of what he calls the rest of the world. So we're talking about countries in Africa, Latin America, places that have historically been kind of on the sidelines of the global economy.
So it's not just a handful of major players calling all the shots anymore.
Yeah.
It's becoming a much more multipolar world.
Exactly. That's one of the key takeaways from Dalio, The future of global power, it's probably going to be a lot more diffuse, multiple centers of influence.
Okay, so we've got Asia rising, the rest of the world stepping onto the field. What other trends are shaping this new world order?
Well, technology is going to be huge, especially AI. Dalio believes that AI has the potential to be even more transformative than the internet.
Wow.
And the countries that are leading the charge on this tech revolution, they're going to have a serious advantage in the years to come.
It's like we're entering this new era of technological competition where AI is the ultimate prize.
Exactly. And it's not just about developing AI itself, right? It's about how countries choose to use it, to promote innovation or consolidate power, to solve problems or make them worse.
It's a lot to consider, for sure. This has been an amazing deep dive. So as we wrap things up, what are your final thoughts for our listener? What should they take away from all of this as they prep for their presentation?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. The future of global power, it's not set in stone. We're all shaping it every single day through the choices we make.
So it's not just about understanding the trends, it's about actively participating in shaping the future.
I love that. Right. It's exciting, a little daunting, but incredibly empowering too, because it means that each of us has a role to play in creating a more just, equitable, and sustainable world.
What an awesome note to end on. Thanks so much for taking us on this deep dive into Dalio's work. It's fascinating stuff.
My pleasure. Always a good time to explore these important topics.
And to our listener, thanks for joining us for this week's deep dive. We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and hey, maybe even a little inspiring. And remember, the world is full of fascinating ideas just waiting to be explored, so keep those questions coming, keep learning, keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.